Hey guys, Ryan here, Fletch TV. Figured while I'm making up a string real quick, I might as well get a little footage and show you guys how I build my strings. I've been wanting to for a little while, so bear with me. This might end up a little bit long. Here you can kind of see just the basics of my string jig. What we have here is your main part is your unistrut. This is what your jig slides on to where you can adjust your lengths. Your head end here has the coil, which is what you're going to tension against. So this is how you're going to crank that string up to 300 pounds. Once you have this compressed to a certain amount, you know what poundage you're at. And you just have a simple little jig for that. I've got it cut at 300 pounds, 350 pounds, and 100 pounds. And so I know where I'm at as far as tension wise. These are just a 1/4 inch roll pins. They go in that I drilled and tapped into some nuts on the end of these threaded rods, and I'll slide you over here so you can kind of see. I've got it set to the length I want now, but so I don't want to mess with but I've got a thrust washer on this end so I can easily rotate this. I've got this nut in front set to stop my length where I want it, just for initial layup. I want this all tight so this can't rotate. But once I get that all set and the string laid out, I'll show you go through the twisting and stretching process. Okay, so I've gone through my Excel sheet. I've got an Excel sheet with the formulas to get your length that you want, because you don't just take the length the manufacturers give you. You have to account for your twist and your stretch rate. But once you have that, you simply start off, and this is just going to be a 20 strand string. I'm actually building the small yokes for an evolve cam, so that's what I'm building. They actually have a few less strands than your main string or your control cables. But as you can see, I take the tag end, I clamp it right here in my jig, wrap it around just for a little extra security, and then I'm going to start wrapping my string. And so I'm going to do 2 sets of 10, so 1, 2, 3. As another thing, I've got my head unit pinned. I've got a pin I can drop through here so it locks this in so it can't stretch or move or anything. You want 0 stretch or movement in your jig while you're laying the string up. So that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then I simply come over to the other side of my jig and lock that tag end down before you cut it. Leave yourself plenty of length. It's better to have that a little bit long than to be short. Okay, now that I've got my first set, my first half built, if I was doing a different color, I would grab that, but I'm doing the same color here. And I'll come down to the other side of the string, because what we're going to do later is we're going to take those tag ends and close them up, and that's what's going to basically create our served loop. So now I'm going to simply follow the same rotation and do my last half of the string. If I was doing different colors, I would want to separate these colors with a piece of string, just so you can always come back to that and you don't have to count out your strands. Let's see, what was that? I'm already not paying attention. So 1, 2, and we're on 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and here's 10. And give myself plenty of tag end, cut that off. Alright, now we're going to move on to securing our tags. Alright, real quick, I forgot to show you guys. I'm just going to take a spare piece of serving material and I am going to remove the excess wax off of these strings. And you really want to do this because that excess wax is what's going to melt and change over time. So that's where you're going to get your main stretch in your strings, is that wax build up changing. So I want to go ahead and strip the excess off of that. This color doesn't have a whole lot. Some other colors are a lot worse than others on that. And just another tip, I wear these little arthritis sleeves when I'm doing it, because as you'll see here in a second, when you go to pull these tags in, they can dig into your fingers pretty good. So it's nice to have, you can either cut the fingers off a pair of gloves, or I like these just because they're quick and easy. But I'm going to take this one end on the bottom, the tag end I started on the bottom, I'm going to wrap it over my other tag end, and I'm going to come up through the bottom of the string, grab that, keeping tension the whole time, and I'm going to pull that tight back around to the center. While that's held tight under the pressure, grab my other tag end, take it, and now I'm going to take this one over and through the bundle, keeping tension the whole time, and I'm going to pull that back towards the center. And I'll get a picture just to show you guys what that looks like when you get it started right. Okay, now that I've got that, I'm going to simply take, and what I like to do is I'm going to go throw a spreader in there just so it's a little easier to get in between the bundle. And then you're just going to continue wrapping. This side always goes under the bundle and comes back that direction. And just keep pulling that back tight so you don't have any gaps in your served loops there. And this side always comes over the top. And just keep pulling that back until you have enough to close your loop. So I'm not going to bore you guys with this, and I will cut out when I get back, and I'll cut back when I get enough of that done. Okay, so I've got those far enough now, so I'm going to show you how I go and close this loop out. On the one side, on my first side I close, what I do is I take my tag and I just come through and I split that bundle, suck it back. I'm going to do this about 3 times, and what this is doing is I'm effectively securing this tag in so it's not going to slide, but I'm not building up any bulk like if I was to back serve it. When you build up too much bulk, it causes problems when you come and do your real serving afterwards. And on this last one, I just do a little quick hitch, slide it down, and that's going to keep it tight. And for time being, I just lock that back in my jig behind, just to keep it out of the way. Now I'm going to pull my splitter out, and I'll show you I have golf tees on the other end, just so I don't lose that roughly in the center of the string horizontally and dead through the center vertically. And that'll affect our twist rate later, you'll see later on. And then to close up the second end, I like to go ahead and close this loop. You can do the same thing I did just a minute ago, but I like to go ahead and close up the loop. This works out a little bit better for me. So I do about 3 wraps over the top there, and then you're just going to do a normal back serve. So you're coming off the bottom, come over the string, and start wrapping inside of itself. Do about 4 or 5 of these, and then you're going to lay it down and start closing up that loop. As you see, it's serving on this direction, and we're unwinding where we just laid down. So once you get to your last loop, take your tag, and just start pulling it down. Once you have that, pull it tight. See, we have a nice smooth transition there, and our serving is going to have no problem laying down right over the top of that. Then I'll just take these tag ends, find my razor blade, and cut those off. And before I twist up or anything, I don't want to mess with my jig right now because I've got it at this exact position and length I need. But before we get too far later on, I will spin this and burn those tag ends so they don't pull through. Now I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. I'm not going to make you watch that. And then when I'm ready, I'll show you how I twist and stretch. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I've got those both ends closed up. Pull the pin out of my head side so this side can now spin and compress this spring. Flip this over real quick. Actually, let's back our stopper knot off. Put a little bit of tension on here, and I'm going to come and melt this tag end that I cut earlier real quick. Careful not to get too close with your flame. I'll put just a little bit of tension on this. Not a whole lot because you're getting ready to twist it up, which is going to add quite a bit of tension. Got my golf tees on both sides, and what that does is it forces the twist to start in the center of the string. And on this particular set, it'll be 12 twists, so I'll go ahead and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if I was doing 2 colors, I would put a piece of serving between the string, and I would chase those 2 colors to make sure everything lays out correctly. Once I have it all laid out correctly and everything twisted and looks good, you do the same thing with pinstripes as well. Now's when you would do that. Now I'm going to remove my golf tees, and I'm going to put in my remaining twist. So 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now we've got my twist in, and I'm ready to bring this up to tension. I stretch my strings with this material at 300 pounds. So I'm just going to crank up this back end. And once I get close, I can kind of visually check, keep an eye on the spring. And then I have my gauge here, just a little shy, probably about 2 more twists. And then I'll bring this nut back, lock it down so it can't spin or anything. Make sure we did hit 300 pounds. Yep. And then I'm just going to I bring a little loop over here and just tie it over the string. Tighten that down just so nothing gets crazy later on and flies up off this post. Because when they bend, they do bend just a little bit inward. Luckily, or on purpose, I've drilled these in at a little bit of a reverse angle at first, so when they do stretch, they come to basically level. So that doesn't happen, but I tie this on just as a backup. And I'm going to let this stretch for an hour, and then we will apply our serving. Stay tuned. Alright, so after I stretched this out for an hour, I let it relax in this loose state overnight. And now I'm ready to take it up to tension, burnish the string, check my length, and then we will apply serving. So first thing I do after it's settled overnight is I'm going to bring it up to about 200-ish pounds or so. Get it nice and tight. Grab my wrench. Just until I see my springs starting to compress a good little bit at the other end there. And Then I will take, you can use a piece of serving. I tend to like a piece of D-loop, just wrap around a couple times and just pull it down the string one time. And I'll try and zoom in here. As you can see, the string is nice and smooth and round now, and that's just going to help that serving bite in, and it's also going to help lock your twist in. So if this was a dual color or pinstripe, it's going to make sure those stay exactly where you put them, so you're not going to lose your pinstripe in the bundle later on. Alright, so now let's back it off to 100 pounds, and I'm going to check my length. Anytime you're checking against the manufacturer's lengths, what they should be, that's always measured at 100 pounds from post to post. So check with my gauge here. Still a little much. Take a little more off. Just about one more twist. Okay. So we're right at 100 pounds now, and I'm looking for 15 3/4, and I am a 1/16 short of that, and it's actually really close to perfect. And I bet when I apply my serving, that's going to give it that extra little bit of stretch, because when you apply your serving, you're effectively compressing the string. You usually gain just a little bit of length. So that's right about where I want to be. So now I'm at my 100 pounds. I'm going to mark my lengths for my serving. I need 5.5 inches on each side from the loop. So grab my silver Sharpie here. And again, measured from that post. And just make a mark at 5.5. And at the other end, 5.5. Alright. So now I'm going to bring it up to about 300 pounds of tension, and we're going to apply our serving. Okay, plenty tight, especially since this is only a 20 strand string and not a full 28 or 32 strand. I don't want to get crazy with that tension. Here's my serving jig. I use the Biter heavy winder. I've used a lot of the cheaper ones in the past, and oops, bumped the camera there. Once you switch to this Biter, you'll never go back to a cheaper jig. And I like to serve towards the loops. And for this serving, I'm using 14 thousandths halo. And I start, and I just clamp that in there. And anytime you're serving, you need to run some kind of string clamps, because when you're serving, you're going to end up twisting the string, and so you're going to have tighter twist under your serving versus outside of your serving. So you need to lock this down to make sure you're not going to get unequal twist rates. That's how your strings end up stretching and peeps rotate. So you really got to lock that down. And because I twisted the string clockwise, I'm going to apply the serving clockwise in the direction of travel. So start and just go over. And all you're doing is laying over your tag end that you have locked under that clamp right now. And just get about 3 or 4 loops started. And I've got my jig set pretty loose right now. Alright, once I get those laid out, I'm going to tighten up my jig. Remove this clamp. Clamp it behind my jig. Take a pair of forceps. Take my tag. Wrap it up a little bit. And pull this tight. So your serving starts tight, and I'm sliding it down to right on my mark. And then I just loop it through that clamp and let that hang. And now I've got my jig tight, and we just start spinning. And I'll fast forward through this so you guys don't have to watch this whole thing. In fact, I'm going to stop it so I don't have such a huge file. Okay, so now I'm down here at the end and I'm ready to close this serving off at the end. So what I do is I take another loop of serving, hook it over my post, and just slide it between your clamp there that you've moved down now that you're at the end. And you will just wrap, take a couple loops over this extra loop of serving you've laid down, and make sure your jig moves in the right direction. Sometimes you have to pull it off and just lay these last few pieces down by hand, and you're just going to go over this loop. Make sure you keep everything nice and tight. This is where your attention to detail is going to make your strings stand out from any competitors, or just going to give you a nice finished product in the end. You just want to keep everything nice and tight. Got one trying to go the wrong direction there. Okay, and now to where I want to go ahead and close this off. Got a decent number of wraps over that. So what I do is I hold my, oops, bumped there. Hold my serving jig off to the side now, holding tension on it. I take a little pick with a hook on it, and I hook that extra piece of serving I laid down. Careful not to poke your actual string or tear this. I'm going to slide some of that out to where I can get it off the post. Leave an open loop there. I'm going to pull out some excess string on my serving jig. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can make sure you see all that. I'm going to cut that. Okay, so now I've got a free tag end, and I just hold that underneath with my thumb, poke the tag end through your extra loop you've created here. Don't pull it all the way through it or it makes it harder to pull underneath your serving. I'm going to take the tag ends of this extra loop I've laid down and just pull this tag through and tighten that down. I'm going to take my forceps off my original tag end, clamp it, and I'm going to pull this tight. And there we go. We have a finished loop, finished serving. And then simply you just cut and burn. And I'm going to do it at the other side for my other serving. Then make one final length check. Add or subtract any twist I may have to get that length perfect. But that is a finished string. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, be sure to let us know. Thanks for watching Fletch Deep TV.